All the hacks in my books, they are just summaries of scientific studies. So when I was going really deep into all the science, I found, all these symptoms and conditions linked to spikes. And I found also these amazing ways we could still eat everything we loved, but without creating these spikes, right? So still eating everything you love, but reducing any symptoms or any problems you might be having physically or mentally. Okay, so eat your food in the right order. Listeners, next time you're faced with a meal, there's something amazing that you should know. If you eat the ingredients in the meal in a specific order, you can reduce the glucose spike of that meal by up to 75% without changing how much you're eating, what you're eating. Just the order has a massive impact on your glucose. So you can still eat the same meal with way less spikes and way less consequences. So the right order is veggies first, proteins and fats second, and starches and sugars last. So let's take an example of a meal maybe. Some fish, some broccoli, some pasta, some olive oil and avocado, and a cookie. So the right order for your glucose levels is going to be the broccoli first, then the fish, then the pasta and the cookie, and the avocado and olive oil. You can kind of have it like with the fish. Now, this is an interesting theoretical thing to understand. It might not always be very practical to just separate out your meal and be like, okay, this first, that then, that then. But there's a few things you should know. Number one, you don't actually have to wait between any of these foods. You can just eat them one after the other and still get the amazing impact on your glucose levels. And number two, really the most important thing here that we need to learn from this scientific study is that the veggies should come first. So what I do now and what my community does is that we always have a veggie starter at the beginning of a meal, and then we just eat the rest of the meal kind of normally. And that already has a massive impact on your glucose levels and how you're going to feel. And so when we eat something that contains glucose on an empty stomach, so when we eat it first, like a piece of bread, the starch breaks down into glucose molecules in your stomach and then shoop, makes its way super quickly into your intestine and your bloodstream because there's nothing stopping it. There's just roller coaster. So it goes straight from your mouth to your bloodstream. So very quickly, the glucose makes its way to your bloodstream and increases the concentration and causes a spike. Now, if you start your meal with veggies instead, this is what happens. Veggies contain another superwoman. And I love how all my molecules and substances are female. But anyway, she's a superwoman, fiber. Have you heard of fiber before?
I love fiber.
You love fiber. So veggies contain fiber. And fiber, when we eat it at the beginning of a meal, she does something absolutely amazing. When she arrives first in your stomach and digestive tract, she makes its way from your stomach to your upper intestine. And there, she deploys itself onto the walls of your intestine, in a cool, viscous, protective mesh, and just stays there, protecting you. That viscous mesh that fiber has created is then going to reduce the spike of your meal because all the glucose molecules arriving later on from the pasta, for example, are not going to be able to make their way as quickly and as much through your intestine into your bloodstream. Because of the fiber shield, the glucose molecules are going to take way longer to make their way into your bloodstream. As a result, you get a smaller spike, but you still ate the same food. Any type of veggie is going to be really helpful. And I try to make it make up about 30% of my meal. And it can be anything. They can be raw, they can be cooked. In my new book, I have 35 amazing veggie starter recipes. You can dress them, you can put, some, olive oil, vinegar, lemon, cheese, whatever onto it to make that veggie starter feel really delicious because it's going to protect you so much. And if you're somebody who suffers from cravings in the afternoon or unsteady energy, I think this hack is a really powerful one to try out.
If the speed in which we has an impact on our glucose spikes as well, if I ate slower, could I flatten the curve?
Absolutely, baby, yes. Listen, I'm a very strong proponent of pick your battles, right? And yes, we could all do better in so many different ways, but also, you're a speed eater, that's fine. Maybe you just deal with that.
No, I'm trying to live my best life.
Okay, so if you want to slow down aging and do all that, so you can do two things. You can either just eat as quickly as you want, but add a veggie starter at the beginning of your meal, right? That already is going to have very powerful impact on your glucose. I would argue it probably will have a stronger impact than just eating the same meal more slowly, because you're not going to eat the meal over 2 hours, right? You might go from 3 minutes to 8 minutes. It's not that big of a difference. The veggie starter will have a much bigger impact on your glucose than just increasing that by a few minutes.
Do you remember hack number 3 from your book?
Stop counting calories.
That's a ghostwriter check. I can confirm you wrote your book.
I did. I had so much fun writing the book.
Tell me about that one.
Well, I want you to know how calories were actually invented and measured, because it is completely mind-boggling. So the way that scientists first started measuring the calories in a food is the following. Okay, so let's use our imagination here. The scientists, they took a box, okay, and they put a food in that box. Let's say that cookie. They put the cookie in a box. Then they put this box with a cookie in it in another box that contains water. So they submerge the cookie box in water, okay? And then somehow they light the cookie inside the small box on fire. They burn the cookie and they measure by how many degrees the surrounding water increases in temperature. That is how we measured calories. Literally measuring how much heat happens when we burn that food. So as a result, you might say, okay, well, you might test a cookie in this setting and you might test it against, an avocado. And you might see that the temperature in that big box increases by as many degrees for both the cookie and the avocado. So from a calorie perspective, you'd say these two foods contain the same number of calories. But that's a really reductive way of thinking about food. It's almost like thinking these two books are both 500 pages, therefore they're the same. You see how that's a problem? The number of pages in a book doesn't tell us anything about what the book is about, who wrote it, what are the words, what's the message, no clue. The calories in a food also gives us no information about what's actually in the food. How is that food going to impact how I feel, my physical health, my mental health, my glucose levels? I want to teach people about the molecules in the food. So they actually start recognizing that food is going to make a spike, that food is not. And teaching them hacks so they can, improve their health. And so hack number 3 is called stop counting calories, because essentially what I found is that if people just focus on balancing their glucose levels and using the hacks to do that, and just completely stop counting calories, their health improves significantly. And it's a much nicer world to live in than a world of calorie counting. Because something else you should know. 2 people can be eating the exact same number of calories. Let's say, 2,000 calories a day. But if one person is eating in a way that causes all these spikes and the other one isn't, the spiky 2,000 calorie person is going to be full of cravings, exhausted, inflamed, aging faster, not sleeping as well, could have mental health issues, could have PCOS, could be gaining weight. It's not the same thing. The calories are not really what matters. We need to learn about how the food is actually affecting us.
The reason why people do count calories is for weight loss or weight, gain reasons. Mm-hmm. But because of the glucose spikes in one set of 2,000 calories, one meal that will give me 2,000 calories, it'll have a significant impact on the insulin levels.
And also on how you're feeling and how you're doing and how difficult, that fat loss is or not. How much of a good time you're having along the way. If you go from 2,000 calories to, I don't know how many, but fewer than that, you're essentially reducing how much you're eating, right? So yes, it's possible that'll lead to weight loss. But that's not really sustainable. Do you really want to count calories for the rest of your life? That feels really difficult to me. And second, it doesn't tell you again, what you're eating. So you're reducing quantity. So that can lead to consequences, but it might not be improving your health at all. You might be losing weight on your body, but actually, increasing the problems and the symptoms and the conditions. So I really hope people stop counting calories and through this science, just kind of learn how to approach the food landscape and how to approach food habits in a way that heals them from everything they want to heal from without the sort of calorie thing.
Breakfast.
Yeah. The main thing we want to do to steady our glucose levels is have a savory breakfast instead of a sweet one. So we want to have a breakfast that contains protein, like eggs, fish, meat, protein powder, maybe some fat like the avocado, that's fantastic. And maybe some fiber if you want to add some veggies in there. And then any sort of breads or starches or potatoes should be there just for taste. It should not be the centerpiece of the breakfast. And then importantly, for a savory breakfast that keeps your glucose level steady, we shouldn't eat anything sweet at all for breakfast, except whole fruit if we want some. If you want to eat something sweet, it's still the best thing to eat because of the fiber that fruit contains. And as I explained, fiber is protective.
In whole fruit.
In whole fruit. So now here's the thing. While a piece of whole fruit is the best thing to eat if you want to eat something sweet, the problem starts when we denature that piece of whole fruit. When we blend it, when we juice it, when we dry it, when we puree it, so many different things. So let's take, for example, when you juice a piece of fruit. Juicing is essentially taking away all the fiber, getting rid of all the fiber. The fiber is like the hard stuff, the pulp and everything that's left over. So if you juice like an apple, you're just taking all the sugar from the apple, putting it in water, and getting rid of all the protective fiber. So all of that super concentrated sugar that's been bred into that piece of fruit, you're now giving to your body in a really, really fast way. And as I explained, the speed of delivery is really important. The faster all that sugar arrives, the more your mitochondria get hurt, the more the spikes are happening, inflammation, etc. And so when you drink apple juice, you're essentially drinking like the amount of sugar in 2 already pretty bred apples and drinking it in a few seconds. And so your body is experiencing a massive spike. And your body doesn't care whether the sugar came from a piece of fruit or if it came from like cane sugar and is in a can of Coca-Cola. The molecules in the apple juice and in the can of Coke are the same. Your body does not make a difference. Your body's not like, oh, this sugar came from fruit, not it's going to cause any issues. Oh, this sugar is from Coca-Cola, oh, it's going to cause problems. Your body does not care. And in a can of fruit juice, there's almost as much sugar as in a can of Coca-Cola. So when we eat fruit juice, we have to do it in a way that's like, okay, this is dessert, right? This is for my pleasure. This is not for my health. This is going to give me pleasure and maybe make me feel a bit happy, but it's not going to help my body.
Which one of these bastards told me that fruit juice was good for me? I've been drinking this stuff like I was...
Me too.
Growing up, if I went and had fruit juice, I was like, well done, Steve.
Yeah.
You've done yourself. And then I got to fucking 30 years old and people start telling me that fruit juice is bad for me. I'm like, who lied to me?
Do you want to know who lied?
Who?
The people who make fruit juice.
Yeah, I thought it would be them.
Yeah. And same for me, I grew up drinking orange juice and a Nutella crepe every morning for breakfast.
Well, no, come on. You knew the Nutella crepe wasn't good for you.
I mean, yeah, but I was like, oh, I'm having orange juice, so it balances it out. I had no idea that I was just eating starches and sugars, just eating a massive glucose spike for breakfast. And when you create a big glucose spike at breakfast, your entire day then becomes completely like a glucose roller coaster. The breakfast spike really dictates how you're going to be doing for the rest of the day.
So what is a whole fruit?
A whole fruit is like a piece of fruit that is just
mean just
whole.
like not processed? Okay.
Yeah, like something you can hold in your hand that you buy at the supermarket, like an untouched from the tree. If you're having a great time, no symptoms, feeling amazing, top energy, no cravings, no hormonal issues, no skin issues, whatever.
I want to be Superman.
Yeah, like if you're doing fine and you're eating things that are sweet and you're having a great time, I have nothing to teach you. But if you're suffering in one way or another, for many of the symptoms we talked about earlier, look at your breakfast and avoid the sweet stuff. So avoid the granolas and the breakfast cereals and the oats with banana and honey in them. Switch to something savory. And I have lots of examples of what's a savory breakfast in my books, but that is really going to help set your day on a much better path and going to help your physical and mental health thrive.
Hack 7, drink vinegar before you eat.
Yeah. So the scientific studies show us that if we have 1 tablespoon of vinegar in a tall glass of water, so this is a pretty good size, 1 tablespoon of vinegar in a tall glass of water before a meal can reduce the glucose spike of the meal by up to 30%. And the insulin spike by up to 20%, which is important because, insulin is also something we want to manage. And you might be wondering, how the heck does that work? Well, vinegar contains another cool molecule called acetic acid. And acetic acid does 2 main things that help our glucose levels. Number 1, you know how I explained that starches, they break down into glucose when you digest them? Well, acetic acid slows down that process. So it slows down how quickly, for example, a piece of bread is going to break down into individual molecules. So it slows down how quickly the molecules of glucose arrive in your bloodstream, which is, again, what we want. We want to slow down the velocity. And second, acetic acid goes to your muscles and it tells your muscles to soak up glucose as it arrives into your body. So glucose arrives more slowly in the bloodstream and muscles soak it up as it gets there. So those two actions reduce the spike of the meal without you needing to change any part of that meal. So if you wanted to have that cookie and you wanted to have the cookie without setting off a glucose roller coaster, without setting off that sugar addiction, having a vinegar drink before would be a really good idea.
Hack 8.
Moving after eating. So your muscles, when they contract, they need energy to do so. And the first place they look for this energy is in the glucose in your bloodstream. So we can use that to our advantage. The more a muscle is contracting, the more glucose it needs. So if we use our muscles for 10 minutes after a meal, some of the glucose from that meal will make its way to your muscles instead of just standing there and creating a spike. And so you can use your muscles in lots of different ways. You can go for a walk, you can clean your apartment, you can play with your dog, you can go to the gym, and you can do my new favorite thing, which is, let's do it together, Steven. So put your feet on the ground and do some calf raises. Do you know what that is? You just like go into your tippy toes and back down, calf raises, and you feel your calf contracting.
Yeah.
So this is actually a really effective way to get your muscles to soak up glucose, because there's a muscle in your calf called the soleus muscle, which is really extra good at soaking up glucose. So for example, after a meal, you're at work, you're at your desk, you want to reduce the spike, do some calf raises like this. Nobody will see, and you'll be helping your glucose
People are
levels.
think I'm so weird. They're going to see me have this shot of vinegar and then sit here like there's something in my
Yeah, but
shoes.
then they're going to be like, damn, Steven is doing so great. Look, he's 65 and still kayaking. Like then they might think they should have done the same.
It's a good trade-off. I'm happy to take the weirdness.
Well, for your glucose is not great, but there's lots of things you can do. So first, don't have the cookie on an empty stomach. Have it after some other food. For example, maybe you bought like some nuts at the airport. Have some of those nuts before the cookie. That's what I call putting clothing on your carbs. And then you can do some calf raises in a plane, right?
Shot of vinegar.
You can do the vinegar. Don't do it as a shot. Make sure you dilute it. It's better for your teeth.
Okay.
If I'm traveling, I always make sure I have a really, really good savory breakfast, even if I'm not hungry, before I leave for the plane. So I have like my favorite like 2-egg omelette with feta and tomatoes. It's my favorite thing to make.
On an idyllic day, based on the science, if you were being Superwoman.
Okay, I'm just going to take a shot in the dark here. Okay, I wake up at 7:45, have breakfast at 8:15, 2-egg omelets with feta and tomatoes. And then that makes me feel pretty good and full until lunch. At lunch, I usually will have like a big ass salad. So like maybe some spinach, quinoa, everything mixed together. I could put some vinegar dressing in there to reduce the spike. Salmon, avocado, cheese, like a nice big like yummy thing. Then inevitably in the afternoon, I want to eat something sweet because I love sugar. Like that's the thing you have to understand. Like I love sweet foods. And that's one of the reasons that I figured out all these hacks, because I was like, I need to reduce my spikes because I want my mental health to improve, but I don't want to give up my chocolate cake. Like that's just not happening. So anyway, inevitably in the afternoon, I'm like, time for some sweet foods. So I'll do lots of hacks around that. I'll do the vinegar hack before the chocolate cake. I'll also do another hack we haven't spoken about yet called putting clothing on your carbs. And so that means when you're eating starches and sugars, add some protein, fat, or fiber to them. So for example, I have the chocolate cake with some Greek yogurt, which is actually a freaking delicious combo as well. So I'll do that, and then I'll go for a walk, or I'll go to the gym, or I'll use my muscles. So I'm getting all the pleasure from the cake with less of an impact. And then in the evening is usually when I have more time to have like a more like longer meal. So I'll do veggie starter, some nice whatever proteins and pasta afterwards. And then usually I don't really want anything sweet after dinner because I've had the sweet thing in the afternoon. That would be my, common food habits. But then today, for example, I woke up at 5:45 because I had this shoot to go to in the morning before coming here. And so I just grabbed some ham from my fridge and I have it in my bag now. And I just started munching on some ham in the morning because, again, a protein-centric breakfast is really key to making sure you have lots of energy all day. And I wanted to come here and have a lot of energy, So I was like, I need to be really good about my savory breakfast today. So I just had that.
What should I be eating, in your view, to stay high energy, to stay focused, etc., etc.? And what should I not be eating?
So you should definitely avoid granola,
Okay.
anything sweet, right? You want to think about, okay, protein at breakfast. So actually your breakfast wrap was pretty good, I would say, because it has eggs, it has avocado, it has, some fats, some protein. That's pretty good. And as long as the wrap is not like a huge amount of bread, you're fine, because it's fine to have bread or starches in the morning for taste. So to me, that would feel like a really good option. And if you do get tired after eating something like that, maybe you're having a bit too much food. That can also be a thing. So maybe have half and you should feel pretty good.
Okay, that's good to know. I always wonder.
And then, a lot of people, they're sad to give up their sweet breakfast foods. And here's another hack you can use. You can still have that sugar, but have it as dessert after lunch or after dinner, instead of like in the morning on an empty stomach. So it's not about cutting anything out. It's about learning to place the foods and organize them in a way that keeps your glucose levels steady, so that you don't kick off the cravings roller coaster where you feel so controlled by all the sugar and the food around you. Learn the glucose hacks and then just eat everything you love.